counterterrorism, investigative journalism, finance, the law, and enforcement. This program presents views and opinions which center around our American conservative ideals, the ideals of our founding, rooted in love of country and the protection of our Constitution and our future generations. Now, here's this week's moderator, William Palumbo.
Good morning, and welcome to the USA Transnational Report. I'm your host, William Palumbo. We're here with our panelists, Andrea Shea King. Good morning, Andrea.
Good morning, William.
And Wallace Brushweiler. Good morning, Wallace.
Morning, William.
Our number is 855-853-5227. Any questions, comments, please feel free to call in, join the conversation. Before we get started today, we'd like to thank our affiliate, AM 1410 KMYC in Marysville, California, and our producer, JJ McCartney, who you can find at jjmccartney.com. Well, each week, the panel here, we meet usually on a Wednesday or Thursday to discuss the topics that we'll be talking about on Saturday morning, and then on Friday evening, we sit down again and we kind of revise based on what's happened. Yesterday, which has been the case on so many other Fridays recently, we had to completely revise our topic list due to late-breaking events. In what has really become the new normal since Obama has taken office, this week we're faced with the horror of another terrorist attack, this time in Nice. Prior week surprises have included the slaughter of police officers in Dallas, the attack on the Bataclan, and anti-Trump riots. So we really are in for some, well, we've been living through some rough times for sure. Yesterday, of course, we got the additional surprise that a now unfortunately failed coup took place in Turkey. And we're going to talk about that a little later on in the show, give you the latest update. But now let's turn our focus to Nice. So there's been another horror in Europe, in France. The reality of jihad actually has become daily news. In conversations I've had with people, friends, both in the U.S. and in Europe, they almost view it as, unfortunately, business as usual, and I find this extremely alarming. To fight this torpor, I guess my question is very simple. Why don't we commit to doing whatever is necessary to reclaim our basic sense of security? And for that matter, why doesn't Europe and the countries in Europe do the same? And I don't understand why we don't end this suicidal, idiotic political correctness that has us fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. When do you think we'll take the gloves off? Based on the reactions this week, there were a number of people who said it couldn't be any clearer, we are at war. But what does that war really look like? And how do we actually come to a point where the situation is back in the bag and under control? So we're going to lead off with that and say a prayer for the 84 dead and 200 plus injured in Nice. But in the interest of preventing things like this in the future, what should our leaders, particularly our hopefully new administration in November, do to combat this on a worldwide scale? So with that, I'd like to open the conversation to our panelists.
If I can jump in, I would like to say that it's going to take new leadership in Washington. We cannot count on the Obama administration to do anything about this. If he hasn't done anything in 7.5 years, he's not going to begin doing it now. He has no reason to. He has made it quite clear that his sympathies lie with the Muslim world, the Muslim community. And Donald Trump, in his announcement this week of Mike Pence as his vice president pick, has said, both of them have come out and said that we need to take the gloves off. And once they are elected, that is exactly what's going to happen. We are fighting a uniformless enemy, and it is an asymmetrical war, one that is going to take all of our resolve to go after them. And I think that as bad as things are right now, and as you described, the somewhat laissez-faire torpor that seems to be, some people seem to be adopting as it's business as usual, this is going to wake them up, because we are facing some very, very violent times. The Islamists among us are not going to go quietly. We're going to see our cities erupting in explosive violence once this new administration gets put in place and takes off the gloves. That's my view on it.
Wallace, in your opinion, do you think that the reaction of the French government, okay? I have here the French Prime Minister basically said to the French people that they must learn to live with terrorism, at least for the time being, just because the problem within their borders is so, it's so ingrained, and they have such a problem with these no-go zones. Do you think that what the French have been doing so far is going far enough, or do you think that perhaps, a new day in American leadership, who knows, will lead to a global strategy which will actually see some new tactics, new strategies to, actually cripple these networks and route out the problem?
Okay, I'll give you the answer in two different sections. First, what is the reaction of the president of Hollande or France? The only thing worth noting, what he came out with, was that they're going to increase the military actions in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. That was his response, which was totally misunderstood and not understood at all by the public at large. That's closest the fact. France, like like Germany and United States, have a huge problem in the intelligence community. They are completely compartmentalized, and they don't talk to each other. And therefore, information which is available in one section, in one agency, is not shared because of jealousies and things like that, which is a common trait in France, in Germany, in England, and especially in the United States. We see that immediately, for example, that the CIA didn't have any knowledge that a military coup was in a brewing in Turkey. It's not. I can't understand that. That's beyond my little mind. I don't play that game any longer. So that's one thing. France has already started, supposedly, to reorganize their intelligence community. Same applies also in Germany. They finally understood. But Germany has a dual problem. Germany has the problem of having Merkel at the helm of the government. In my opinion, today, in what I call the Western world, we are faced with three blocks. Three major countries having alliances which I do not understand. One was, unfortunately, Turkey. Turkey is moving after the coup, the failed coup last night, moving directly into the steps of Iran. It's going to be a fight between, at the end of the day, will be a fight, if that goes on, between Tehran and Ankara. And then Merkel, who is a sympathizer of the Muslim faith, and eventually here we will be able to reverse the course by November elections. But because otherwise there is nothing else. Let's assume for 1 second that sanity comes and prevails on November, that Trump gets into the seat in the White House. He will have an incredible problem. He will have to be surrounded by people who know what to do and how to do it, and especially how to handle foreign governments. And I'm talking here especially France and mainly Germany. Germany is a problem. Let's assume that for 1 second we want to form a global alliance and declare war. This is the only way that we can topple that problem. We will have a problem convincing people like Merkel. For Erdogan, you can count him out. That's absolutely not. He's a caliph. That's it. He showed his true colors. I can tell you at the end of this show, I will give you some incredible news which I got from the Germans. I just want to keep the suspense till the end. But Erdogan is a shabby character, and I don't understand, or I understand because if you remember, Obama declared that Erdogan is his best friend. So I mean, when you get this kind of alliance, it's very difficult to come to grips. Regarding the attack in Nice, there is very little that you can do, in my opinion, unless you have infiltrated those circles, and that is valid in France, in Germany, in England, and especially in the United States. There is no other way. To stop that politically correctness idiocy and allow scientific profiling, which has to be done. There's nothing, you can't get around that. And you have to infiltrate those groups. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think that the so-called civil libertarians, which have put up all these walls in this country, and I guess really the West in general, to say that, you know, privacy and the rights of individuals, which we all cherish, but you know, are we going to really be willing to sacrifice our own citizens, our own people, our own children, you know, at the altar of these rights every week? I mean, I think eventually people will have to start to recognize that perhaps they've gone a bit too far with their insistence that, you know, there should be no monitoring of electronic, you know, communication, eavesdropping, you know, monitoring of mosques, etc. But that really kind of brings us to the new world we're living in, right?
Right.
And what the next president, let's say, will face. And part of that is the complete realignment of the Middle East. We almost had an earthquake in the Middle East yesterday with that coup. But nonetheless, there were developments earlier in the week which still pointed to the fact that, you know, let's say in January, when we hope a President Trump comes in, he's going to have to sit down with our former allies who have already started to reorganize all of their alliances to deal with the regional challenges as they exist today. And one of those allies certainly was, and I'm not sure still is, Israel. And Israel and Egypt, our other main ally over there, seem to have taken very recent, or this week, steps to bolster their alliance and create a bulwark against the really the problems that Obama and, for that matter, Hillary Clinton have created in the region. So I think we should spend some time discussing the new Middle East and the latest developments therein.
Before we get to that, William, I just want to circle back to something that you've just said, and that is that, you know, people have to understand that we are right now, we are at war, whether people realize it or not. It's just not a full-blown war. And what you're saying about how, you know, people have to understand that there are certain things that happen that they need to be, for example, surveillance, etc. A lot of that depends on trusting the leadership of our country to be doing it in America's best interests. Under the present administration, I would not trust them with any liberties whatsoever, because they have shown that they turn those liberties, those privileges around and use it on we the people as opposed to the enemy. So I just want to issue that caveat. I would not trust this administration with surveillance, with anything. They've proven that they are inept, they're incapable, and maybe even worse than that, deliberate in what they do with those benefits, if you will. So I just wanted to make that clear. If Trump and Pence are elected, then I think we stand a better chance of having most of the electorate go along with, okay, this is what we've got to do. Kind of like rationing during World War II. The American people understood this is what you had to do in order to win the war. Well, I think that that'll happen once the new administration comes in.
Point taken. I would just add that the problem that we have with this administration is that they're monitoring the wrong people, and they refuse to monitor, the mosques, for example.
Exactly.
Can I just add one thing? Everybody's complaining about today's administration. Listen, we elected those people.
No, I didn't.
Listen, let's not. Okay. Every country deserves the government it elects. We are at fault.
Yes, I agree.
And say we were stupid. Period. And hoping that next time we do a better job. But let's come to the problem William mentioned before. I can tell you that there was a meeting which was exceptionally reported in the press, which is the first time I know of. The head of Mossad, Yossi Cohen, went to Moscow. He sat down with Vladimir Putin and his security advisor, Nikolai Patrushev. The two discussed security issues related to the Middle East. According to a statement which was released then by Patrushev's office, Cohen also met with the head of the SVR, which is the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. A parenthesis there. That SVR has tripled in size in the last 10 years. There is a reason to that. If we can go and I try to explain what it is. The main reason that it tripled in size was the fact that when the communist regime, when the Soviet Union collapsed, they lost a lot of input which was provided by satellite countries like Hungary and so on and so forth. So they had to fill that hole and they had to triple the size. Now, coming back to the thing, it is considered unusual for there to have been an official announcement about the meeting because Cohen's trips, Cohen is the head of the Mossad abroad, are usually made in secrecy. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met 2 weeks ago with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow to mark the 25 years of Russia-Israel relations. Now, as a direct fallout from that meeting, there was a foreign minister, an Egyptian foreign minister, who came to Jerusalem. And he sat down with Bibi Netanyahu. The Saudi Arabia News Network reported Monday that Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu has expressed willingness to meet with Palestinian Authority head Mahmoud Abbas at a summit in Cairo. I just got yesterday news that Abbas refuses to come to Cairo and meet with Bibi Netanyahu unless Israel accepts all the preconditions, which is totally out of question. Now, Netanyahu reportedly agreed to such an event during his meeting on Sunday last week in Jerusalem with Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri. Abbas reportedly agreed to the summit prior to the meeting with Netanyahu. And now he recounted and he says he's absolutely not concerned. Now, whether this is being discussed or not, Israel has always said it is ready to direct negotiate bilaterally and without precondition. That's what Bibi Netanyahu's office stated in response to the report. Simultaneously, Israel media reported that there was and is an effort underway by Cairo and Jerusalem to set a meeting between Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Netanyahu in Egypt to coordinate a regional peace effort. So that means we don't come into play, they are playing on their own, and I suppose with the blessing of Saudi Arabia. That's what I have to say.
So, Wallace, do you see that as a real plus, a real positive, and if so, or negative? How do you view this?
Yeah, if you look at it from a Middle Eastern point of view, I see it as a very positive. From our point of view, it's a disgrace because we've been cut out.
Interesting.
The John Ketchup Kerry and all those, his gang from the State Department, they're clueless. They don't understand what's going on. And on top of everything, our agency, the CIA, does not provide the goods they are supposed to provide.
Mm-hmm. So you see a new realignment, if you will, or a new alignment of a coalition in the Middle East that is going to strengthen Israel's position and security over there.
It will be. It's not only the security of Israel. It's going to be it will be a blessing for the entire Middle East, because countries like Israel, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Dubai, all those countries, they understood that they cannot count on us. We failed them totally. So therefore they say, okay, we have to do it on our own. And the thing which is, nobody reported that. There was a meeting last week in Paris from it's an association which is, the goal is to counterbalance and try to overturn the regime in Tehran. There were about 10,000 people participating in that meeting. One of the
Folks, we are having some technical difficulties. We apologize. We will return with the USA Transnational Report in just one moment. Stand by.
Please tell the host what you would like to talk about, then press the pound key.
What the? Again.
Okay.
All right, you're back on.
Okay, I think that we had a technical problem there. So Wallace, you were saying, I'm sorry, go ahead, continue.
I don't know where you lost me.
Lost you. We were talking about how the Israel and Egypt, they can't count on America anymore. We have failed them, and so I guess what you were saying is that they're now turning to Putin and Russia to form an alliance of that will benefit the Middle East.
Listen, I think I have to repeat myself, which I said months ago. Putin plays his cards very wisely. Putin has a problem in-house, the same problem we have, but nobody's talking about it. He has a Muslim extremist problem in-house in Chechnya. That's one problem. Mm-hmm. So he handles that the way it should be handled here, but obviously we are not allowed to do that. But he doesn't take any prisoners. Whenever something happens in Chechnya, he sends crack units in there and they clear the ground, period. End of the story, they turn the page. Now, to answer your question, the Middle East, they understand. They don't need a direct involvement of Putin. They just want him not to be against them. So that's what happens at the end of the day. And I don't know if you got I was talking about, there was a meeting last week in Paris where 10,000 people gathered, and that it's an association which goes, the only goal is that they try to topple the government and change the government in Tehran, in Iran. And one of the dignitaries attending that meeting is a member of the royal family of Saudi Arabia. He's the third in line for the succession. And that guy came out with a statement, surprised everybody. He said, listen, we favor a change of regime in Tehran. Now, change of regime, in quotes, is to be understood in Middle Eastern terms, a military action.
Oh, boy.
I'd just like to remind everybody you're listening to the USA Transnational Report on jjmccartney.com. Any calls, anyone listening who wants to comment with questions, etc., our number is 855-853-5227. I'm sorry, I have to apologize. I was kind of missed some of the discussion earlier. Wallace, did you mention the pages from the 9/11 Commission that were released yesterday? Is that what was being discussed?
No.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
But we'll do it now. Wallace, do you want to take the lead on that?
Oh, no, I don't want to talk about that. I'm against that. I'm against the release of those 28 pages.
Really?
Yes.
Well, explain why. That's interesting. Why?
for a very simple reason. Things which are done in the intelligence community side certain things should not be shared with the public at large, period.
As it turns out, though, these 28 pages really don't. They don't indict Saudi Arabia, or at least the leadership within the Saud family. I think that the most damning thing that the report found was that senior Al-Qaeda operative Abu Zubaydah, who was captured here in the United States in 2002, had phone numbers that were tied to the same company that managed a Colorado residence of the Saudi ambassador to the U.S. Zubaydah also had a phone number for a bodyguard at the Saudi embassy in Washington. I think what also came out of this, too, is that our intelligence community didn't adequately focus on the Saudi connection to Al-Qaeda and called this lapse, the report did, called it unacceptable given the magnitude and immediacy of the potential risk to U.S. national security. Once again, pointing to what you were saying earlier, Wallace, that things are stovepiped. The agencies are not talking to one another. They're not sharing information within the United States, let alone, through Interpol and other agencies, outside of the United States. So that was my takeaway from this 28-page report. I mean, why did they keep it under wraps? It wasn't really that damaging.
I was going to say, what is with the timing of the release of this report? I mean, we have officially, let's say, less than 6 months left in this administration. They've kept these 28 pages, away from the public this long for the last practically 8 years. Now all of a sudden they just have a change of heart. One Friday morning they wake up and they say, "Okay, we're going to release this report." They send it to Congress, who redacts additional information. And as Andre mentioned, it really doesn't indict the Saudi government. It indicts some of their citizens and some of their charities. But it has been characterized as something that really paints Saudi Arabia not as an ally but as an enemy. What do you make of the timing? To me, it suggests that, as with all their other actions in the Middle East, the administration is going against our traditional allies, one of them being Saudi Arabia, who, of course, is the main threat against Iran in the region, right? Does this eventually play into the hands of Iran to further demonize the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
That is one side of the coin, but the other side, which is a hell of a lot more important, waits now till the left here gets hold and comments on those 28 pages. They will go all over the place. First of all, they will say that, like you pointed out, that we covered up for Saudi Arabia. You see, the link to Saudi Arabia existed, but existed on a personal base and with some phone numbers. At that time, nobody knew exactly what the implication could and potentially would be. So therefore, and on top of everything, I've seen I've read through those pages. They blanked out but anybody with a little bit of intelligence can reconstruct how we obtained that information. And this is what I'm condemning. You cannot put that into the public domain. That's out of question. This is why there are people in the government who have security clearance. They should respect that. And respect that for all those years. I don't understand what you asked. How come it was released yesterday? I can tell you why. The usual Friday afternoon business, in order that people forget over the weekend
what happened during the week.
Exactly.
Right. Well, but the bigger issue here is that under President George W. Bush, he had classified these 28 pages, and he did it according to what I understand, to protect intelligence sources and methods, and many to believe to also avoid offending Saudi Arabia, which is, of course, an oil-rich U.S. ally.
Okay, and then my question is, and then? You said it's very correct.
Thank you. You will now be placed in the queue.
Again.
Go ahead, Wallace. Finish your thought.
No, you're very right what you said, but and so what? I mean, I don't understand. Bush was correct in not releasing and putting a seal on those 28 pages, and I don't understand what is it that's still the vengeance from Obama to denigrate Bush.
I don't know, but it was former Senator Bob Graham of Florida who pushed hard for this.
Yeah,
he was the driver in this.
Yes, but okay, but listen, some people at given a certain age become a little bit unpredictable. I'm not trying to be offensive, but that's the way I see it.
Okay, all right. Well, I think
is it time to move on? Yes, I think it is.
Yeah, it probably is.
We've had we mentioned at the beginning of the show that it's such a busy news week. So this time around, we're kind of doing a rapid fire, topic by topic coverage of what's gone on. And I would say the biggest news of the week prior to what happened, prior to Nice, was certainly the announcement of Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, who turns out to be, Mr. Pence. Now, Governor Pence of Indiana, people look at this and they say, well, perhaps this pick was to pacify the conservative wing of the Republican Party. I know from personal interactions and people I know who are familiar in some cases with Pence's staff that they see him as a true consummate insider in the Republican Party, someone who really knows how the government operates, how it works. In my opinion, this is a pretty smart pick. It wouldn't have been my pick personally, but nonetheless, it seems to be someone who can help him govern effectively, who can manage his relationship with the various institutions on a normal professional level. But we've heard a lot of this in the news. I think, Andrea, you may have some additional insight into the character of Governor Pence, which I think our listeners may find very interesting.
Well, from my sources, I'm given to understand that Mike Pence is a solid guy. He's very well grounded. He's a Christian conservative, was raised in an Irish Catholic family, and became born again Christian later on in life. He's married, has 3 children of his own. He's very supportive of Israel and its right to attack facilities in Iran to prevent them from developing nuclear weapons. He has defended the actions of Israel and its use of deadly force in enforcing the blockade of Gaza, and he has referred to Israel as America's most cherished ally. Now, he brings, as you mentioned, William, important executive and legislative experiences to the ticket, which could assuage some concerns among conservatives that Donald Trump lacks governing knowledge or the skills to navigate Congress. A little bit of background about Pence. He was elected in 2000 to the House of Representatives, and he spent 12 years there, many of those on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, which is key here. And that's important experience in view of what we are up against. He also headed up a conservative caucus, spent time in House leadership on the following committees: agriculture, judiciary, small business, and international relations. He left Congress, was elected to Indiana's governorship and where he's been for the past 2 terms. I'm sorry, since January. 2 terms. Longtime supporter of the Tea Party movement. In fact, when he was in Congress, he headed up the Tea Party caucus. So he is not afraid to come to say, I am Tea Party, which is a real big plus for a lot of conservatives out there. He began his career in talk radio, interestingly enough, hosting the Mike Pence Show. Indicates that he's a good communicator, which is critical to what we need now, because you have to be a good communicator to get across your mission and what the country, to galvanize the country and focus it into what that mission is. He's also seen as having a cool head, steady hand, and a lot of people think that that could counter the impulsive, kind of brash Donald Trump. And that Pence's social conservatism could allay some fears about Trump's views on issues, for example, such as abortion. So it's a good pick. What I'm hearing is it's a good pick. Even former 2016 presidential candidate Marco Rubio said Mike Pence is rock solid. Great pick. So that's it.
Thank you, Andrea. I would like to note that, almost immediately following the attack in France, it was, Pence came out, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Pence came out and said, we have to view this as a war and we should declare war.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, he did, yes.
I think in terms of instincts, it was he and Newt Gingrich, and I think, for that matter, Donald Trump, all came out on the same page, right?
Yes, they did. And I also know that on the inside, Senator Jeff Sessions thinks very highly of Mike Pence and may have even been influential in Donald Trump's pick of Mike Pence. He's well respected in Congress, very highly regarded, and so is Senator Jeff Sessions. So I think what we're seeing happening here is the knitting together of some very solid leadership that is going to steer this ship of state, if you will, in the right direction, or at least turn it around from the direction that we've been headed over the last 7.5 years.
Now they just need to get through that perilous convention. I mean, I think the security concerns there are, very well founded. It's my understanding that, in fact, there are such concerns around what's going to happen in Cleveland. In fact, around the convention center, someone described it, one commentator, as looking like the green zone in Iraq. Hopefully with the announcement of Pence as the vice presidential pick, now kind of the GOP is, well, I shouldn't say the GOP. The people have effectively forced the GOP to come together, as an institution and present America with the candidate of Donald Trump in a professional, political, let's say, normal manner, which will allow us to defeat Hillary Clinton. But we should keep an eye on that convention, because I'm not so sure that's going to go off without any serious problems based on what's going to be going on around the world and around the country. Wallace, yep.
I want to jump in and say that, one of the questions that's being raised is, will this get the Ted Cruz supporters on board with this ticket? And my sense of it from reading social media is that no, the folks who support Cruz are adamant, and they don't like Trump, and I don't know that they're going to support him. Vote for him. Some of them will. Some of them won't, but I think that the Cruz contingents are hard over radicals for Cruz.
That's their problem. Yes, Wallace.
I'll just correct one thing. You mentioned that Cleveland would be the equivalent of the green zone in Baghdad. I'm sorry to say, but in Baghdad, the green zone has been attacked very successfully with 2 major bombs.
Yes, that did happen, and in fact, Baghdad was a few months ago was taken over by rioters.
A comparison with the green zone in Baghdad, is far-fetched and not exactly correct. Because I hope that they do a better job for the Republican convention.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we also learned this week that the Rules Committee that was charged with just determining whether or not the delegates could be freed to vote their conscience ended in failure, abject failure. It fizzled right out, which is good. We're glad that happened, but it's further angered those folks who weren't Trump supporters. It's going to be interesting to watch what happens on the convention floor when the entire delegation is asked to vote on what the Rules Committee has recommended.
Well, they'll have to take their lumps and accept they're going to have to accept the judgment of the voters, just like everyone else has to accept the judgment of the voters.
Exactly.
As Wallace was saying earlier, we all elected Obama in some respect because we didn't stop him, and the same logic should be applied to Donald Trump. The people elected Donald Trump, and these people with sour grapes are just going to have to live with it. But we have about 15 minutes left, and we had some big news out of the UK this week. They have a new prime minister, Theresa May. May is known for a number of things, one of them being her strong support of Israel. This week, she named her cabinet, or many members of her cabinet. And, of course, the first thing on her plate, the overriding political issue in the UK right now, is going to be the terms of the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union following the success of the Brexit campaign. So I think that's worth some time discussing what can we expect out of the UK, what will our relationship look like with this new government of May. Perhaps how will that change if there's depending on who's elected in November, and how does this rebalance our relationship with Europe and Britain? So let's spend some time discussing that.
I can give you the rundown of the cabinet ministers if you're interested. Obviously, Theresa May as Prime Minister, Philip Hammond as Chancellor of the Exchequer, Amber Rudd, Secretary of State for Home Department. The big surprise, which I don't understand and don't agree particularly, is Boris Johnson, the Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs. That means the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's the equivalent of John Kerry. Then Elizabeth Truss, Lord Chancellor, Secretary of State for Justice. Michael Fallon, Secretary of State for Defense. That's very good. Damian Green, Secretary of State, Work and Pensions. Jerry Hunt, Secretary of State for Health. And David Lidington, Lord President of the Council, Leader of the House of Commons. And then so on and so forth. But those are the key figures. And I think apart from, as I said, Boris Johnson, I personally don't see any problem, quite the opposite.
Mm-hmm. One of the reports that I read was that Amber Rudd, who has been appointed Home Secretary, there's some concern about her because she is very much a climate change adherent. And from what I understand, too, she came across quite appallingly during the EU referendum campaign. She was strident, vindictive, easily bought, self-serving, and a bit thick. So that's the description that was used. That the jury is out on that thing, but. It's to counter that. There's also something else about being the position of Home Secretary that, as it's described, it's a poisoned chalice. So much can go wrong, and almost certainly will for her. So it won't be long before Rudd's fox is shot. And this is the best guess of the folks who are following this. And on the bright side, a lot of healthy quota of Brexiteers in the positions that could really make a difference. What you've just mentioned, Wallace, David Davis, Secretary for exiting the European Union, a good sound choice. Liam Fox, international trade, good sound choice. Boris Johnson, he's the buffoon, he's the clown as Foreign Secretary. Another way of looking at this is that whether he's sound or not is anyone's guess, but some people believe he's going to be great.
No, I like that Boris Johnson is there because the next meeting before we change administration here, the next meeting of Minister of Foreign Affairs, there will be two clowns, John Ketchup Kelly and Boris Johnson.
Well, it suggests that Britain's new Prime Minister, Theresa May, might have a hidden sense of humor. So
she has the sense of humor I have, which is not well understood.
Well, a couple things I read about May, and one of them was that she was, I believe, Minister of Interior there prior to being elected Prime Minister by her party. And one of the things that she was championing within the government was really the ability for the services in the UK to conduct, let's say, electronic surveillance to prevent terrorist attacks. And that's something that she was known for, being a champion of this bill, which some people presented as draconian, but in light of the weekly situations we face, perhaps sounds quite prescient. And the other thing that I came across, which she's very well known for, is her strong and unflagging support of the state of Israel, which is certainly a welcome development in British politics, especially following Cameron, who couldn't get anything straight in the Middle East. He was just as much of a non-visionary as Obama. Perhaps that's being a little harsh. Obama probably did have a vision. It just didn't include the United States or Britain. But I think those are two generally positive things, given the world we're living in and the kind of challenges we're facing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Here's the other thing, too, that there is an entire industry willing that Britain's exit from the EU is a spectacular disaster. And that includes Obama, Christine Lagarde, the European Commission, Goldman Sachs, and all the other big banks, George Soros, most of the leaders in the EU member states, although probably not Angela Merkel, oddly enough, because she's an arch pragmatist, the BBC, The Guardian, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all the United States TV channels except for Fox, and the vast majority of the British, European, and U.S. commentariat. So this is going to be interesting to see, because it's like there are great forces against England, Britain, getting out of the European Union. So she's got her work cut out for her.
Well, I really think Britain has started a trend, and with the Brexit vote and really breaking with the globalists, right? I was hoping, I think we all were, that events in Turkey went the other way, which really would have been the second tremendous domino to fall. Mm-hmm. But that didn't quite work out. However, I think probably the continent is looking at what Britain did and the fact that they are determined to get back some ability to rule themselves, and in France and in Germany, they'll probably follow in suit and say enough is enough. We have to stop this madness.
It's going to be a battle royal with an E at the end of royale. Yes,
a battle royale. Yes. Now, we did have two more topics to cover. One of them being Turkey and what's gone on there, and we will get to that last thing. But I did want to sneak in a quick report on what one of bin Laden's sons came out with this week, threatening the United States for vengeance for murdering, assassinating, however you want to put it, killing his father, which he so rightfully deserved. So, Wallace, what can you tell us about bin Laden's son, and do you think that there'll be any repercussions as a result of his comments?
There will be repercussions because of the exposure. But okay, let's go chronologically. On July 9th, Al-Qaeda's media arm released an audio statement from Hamza bin Laden, son of the late Al-Qaeda leader. Vowing revenge over the death of his father, Osama bin Laden, Hamza boasted of Al-Qaeda's growth in the last 15 years. While Hamza's message was very bin Laden-esque in its content and delivery, Ayman al-Zawahiri's July 11th audio message was predictably lackluster. Hamza bin Laden is a generational link for a group obsessed with its past and confident about its future. 5 years after the killing of Osama bin Laden, his son Hamza appears to be assuming the symbolic mantle of Al-Qaeda leadership. In an audio recording released, as I said, on July 9th, Hamza bin Laden delivered a very bin Laden-esque statement, complete with soaring oratory and a unifying message. It was also typically violent. Hamza vowed revenge against the United States for the killing of his father, the leader of the global jihadist movement, and the man whom he may be well positioned to replace. We believe that he's 25 years old. Hamza is the physical extension of bin Ladenism, having spent his entire life surrounded by Al-Qaeda. That we wait what the outcome of his statement. I didn't hear much movement in that respect.
Yeah. For years now, we've been hearing that the leadership of Al-Qaeda has been decimated through various means, including the drone program. I read that particular son is looking to take over the leadership, presumably for Zawahiri, the Muslim brother who trained bin Laden, and really, in my opinion, one of the worst characters in the world. But I guess I'm wondering, to what extent is Al-Qaeda really different than ISIS at this point? I mean, are they incredibly distinct organizations? It seems to me that as you go over national boundaries, all these organizations kind of blur into one another, and that drawing these distinctions is kind of a fool's errand.
It is. It's the same system which has been used in Europe during the height of terrorism in Germany, in Italy, in France. It's to confuse issues. All those people are, let's say, the headquarters of all those organizations is in Tehran, period. And this is what we have to once and for all realize. We are fighting extremist Islam, and it makes no difference what kind of labor they use. They are all part of the same problem.
They also have a friend in Erdogan, who probably is going to be much more powerful thanks to Yeah, thanks to what happened yesterday. And with that, I think we should update our listeners on the latest and fill them in on some of the details which they probably haven't heard on their local news stations.
Well, for sure, the coup looks like it has failed, even though there are pockets of resistance still. But we've seen some pretty gruesome photos of soldiers being whipped. The reports are that some soldiers have already been beheaded. Erdogan is not Erdogan, however you want to pronounce it.
However you want to pronounce it.
Yeah. He is not going to take this lightly. He is going to use this as an example, and God help those who have been caught up in this. 3,000 now taken prisoner. So I'm disappointed. I would have liked to have seen this coup happen just for the fact of liberty and freedom. But it appears that the people of Turkey were very much in support of Erdogan. And they did not want this coup at all. So they, like Wallace, like you said earlier, we voted for Obama. We got the government we deserved, and I think they do too.
No, but I think that I will go one step further. The youngsters who backed Erdogan are, in my opinion, I compare them to the people who rallied at the Bernie Sanders rallies. It's the same generation. Those people are totally misguided. They don't understand it. First of all, they're, in my opinion, widely uneducated.
Yes, I agree.
I will give you one thing which I just got a couple of hours ago. It seems that during the height of the coup, Erdogan took his private jet and flew into Europe, where he was pleading for asylum. His plane, his jet, was traced to overfly Frankfurt towards Cologne, which obviously Germany, because of his friendship with Merkel. So that was quite, in my opinion, quite a thing, because the map showed the trace of the flight leaving Turkey and over direction to Germany and circling in Germany. And I suppose that's where they were trying to make contact with the German government.
Yeah, isn't it amazing that friendship you just mentioned that Erdogan has with Merkel? It wasn't that long ago when Obama admitted to the press that his best friend internationally was Erdogan. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the way things have shaken out, particularly with the EU and the Brexit vote and the migrant invasion, it is Merkel, Obama, and Erdogan always on the same side of the equation, isn't it?
But I would go one step further, William. I know it will surprise you. Some people it will surprise. You have to compare the situation created here with the situation created in Turkey. In Turkey, about a year after Erdogan, or 2 years after he came to power, he chopped off practically the top of the military system. They are all in jail. There are about 110 high-ranking generals in jail at that time. Now, you compare that to what Obama has been doing with our military system.
He purged them.
Same thing.
Yes.
Same thing. So you see the similitude, and this is why that let's say that statement, like for Obama coming out and he says, "Oh, Erdogan is my best friend." That shows that kind of similitude and
birds of a feather flock. Birds of a feather flock together. But we are now at the very end of the show, and that wraps up this week's edition of the USA Transnational Report, heard live every Saturday, 8 a.m. on jjmccartney.com. Visit our website, usatransnationalreport.org. Thank you to our panelists, Wallace and Andrea. I'm William Palumbo. Till next week, thanks for joining us.
This has been a Nightside Radio Studios, JJMcCartney.com production. In the 21st century, the world is proving to be a crazy place. And we here at the J.J. McCartney Show are doing our best to battle the insanity with the one thing that can set things right, the truth. We trust in God Almighty, and we speak the truth without shame or hesitation. The truth is divine. It belongs to God, and it wavers for no man. Fact. America's government today is far more tyrannical and oppressive than the government of King George III when our founders declared independence and won the Revolutionary War. Taxation in America today is beyond massive, and our founding fathers would be appalled to see what has happened in America in the past 100 years. Fact. America will not recover from its failing economy, nor will it fend off hostile enemies until America turns back to God and repents of its wickedness. The remedy for all our problems must begin with the humble prayers of Americans and true remorse and repentance for the sins America has embraced. In a phrase, America needs to turn back to God instead of turning its back on God. Tune into the J.J. McCartney Show every weekday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, where you will hear truth and where we will not pull any punches when it comes to the machinations of evil in our midst today. People of today have become a godless bunch. The government decided that we must take God out of the classroom and instead teach evolution and institutionalize godlessness in our educational halls.
Out of the teaching of godlessness, the teaching of evolution, the teaching our children, generations of children, that they're nothing more than souped-up monkeys, out of teaching that for generations comes this mindset that there is no accountability, there is no eternal purpose, there is no eternal accountability. So therefore, we can rip a baby out of a mother's womb while at the same time protecting an eagle's egg.
People want to be left alone in their sin. They don't want to be reminded of their own mortality. They just want to live in the moment, pleasuring their flesh. That's what is wrong with America today, and it's what's been wrong with the human race since Eve took a bite of that apple.
The ability to instantly communicate our thoughts, our feelings, to send pictures, pornography, trash, filth, slander, gossip, lies, and even false reports about school shoot. We can do that instantly now. And so the darkness of man's heart is now magnified.
It is.
It's on steroids.
It's very likely that that instantaneous communication is what's going to lead to the beginning of World War III or some other apocalyptic event. Terrorism has become much more prolific with the advent of all this modern communication. Not saying that they wouldn't have done it if they only had sticks and stones. We live in an instantaneous world now. Well, and if you or I say something that somebody at the NSA doesn't like, they could have us picked up in 5 or 10 minutes. Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, Eric Holder in address, gave Congress a statement today, speaking before Congress, told lawmakers on Capitol Hill that the president definitely has the legal right to use his executive authorities to enact gun control, and that Congress itself had previously given him that ability, clarifying points of President Obama's recently announced executive actions on firearms. Lynch said it was all consistent with the Constitution and laws passed by Congress. The Gun Control Act lists the people who are not allowed to have firearms, such as felons, domestic abusers, and others, to make sure guns stay out of the wrong hands. She underscored, quote, "The actions announced by the president, which focus on background checks and keeping guns out of the wrong hands, are fully consistent with the laws passed by Congress." Republicans on the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee did not agree. The American people are fearful that President Obama is eager to strip them of their Second Amendment rights. Let me be clear, the Second Amendment is not a suggestion. Now, where have I heard that before? The J.J. McCartney Show. Weekdays, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern at jjmccartney.com. The following is a Nightside Radio Studios production. From the Beltway to the Bible Belt, from Wall Street to Bourbon Street, from the Pacific Northwest to the Eastern Seaboard, this is the USA Transnational Report, exposing what's in plain sight. Our live look around the world as we round up and review the week's news and newsmakers with our panel of expert insiders, politics, counterterrorism, investigative journalism, finance, the law, and enforcement. This program presents views and opinions which center around our American conservative ideals, the ideals of our founding, rooted in love of country and the protection of our Constitution and our future generations. Now, here's this week's moderator, William Palumbo.
Good morning, and welcome to the USA Transnational Report. I'm your host, William Palumbo. We're here with our panelists, Andrea Shea King. Good morning, Andrea.
Good morning, William.
And Wallace Brushweiler. Good morning, Wallace.
Morning, William.
Our number is 855-853-5227. Any questions, comments, please feel free to call in, join the conversation. Before we get started today, we'd like to thank our affiliate, AM 1410 KMYC in Marysville, California, and our producer, J.J. McCartney, who you can find at jjmccartney.com. Well, each week, the panel here, we meet usually on a Wednesday or Thursday to discuss the topics that we'll be talking about on Saturday morning, and then on Friday evening, we sit down again and we kind of revise based on what's happened. Yesterday, which has been the case on Zinn, he's going to have to sit down with our former allies who have already started to reorganize all of their alliances to deal with the regional challenges as they exist today. And one of those allies certainly was, and I'm not sure still is, Israel. And Israel and Egypt, our other main ally over there, seem to have taken very recent, or this week, steps to bolster their alliance and create a bulwark against the really the problems that Obama and, for that matter, Hillary Clinton have created in the region. So I think we should spend some time discussing the new Middle East and the latest developments therein.
Before we get to that, William, I just want to circle back to something that you've just said, and that is that, people have to understand that we are right now, we are at war, whether people realize it or not. It's just not a full-blown war. And what you're saying about how, people have to understand that there are certain things that happen that they need to be, for example, surveillance, etc. Mm-hmm. A lot of that depends on trusting the leadership of our country to be doing it in America's best interests. Under the present administration, I would not trust them with any liberties whatsoever, because they have shown that they turn those liberties, those privileges around and use it on we the people as opposed to the enemy. So I just want to issue that caveat. I would not trust this administration with surveillance, with anything. They've proven that they are inept, they're incapable, and maybe even worse than that, deliberate in what they do with those benefits, if you will. So I just wanted to make that clear. If Trump and Pence are elected, then I think we stand a better chance of having most of the electorate go along with, okay, this is what we've got to do. Kind of like rationing during World War II. The American people understood this is what you had to do in order to win the war. Well, I think that'll happen once the new administration comes in.
Point taken. I would just add that the problem that we have with this administration is that they're monitoring the wrong people, and they refuse to monitor, the mosques, for example.
Exactly.
Can I just add one thing? Everybody is complaining about today's administration. Listen, we elected those people.
No, I didn't.
Listen, let's not. Okay. Every country deserves the government it elects. We are at fault.
Yes, I agree.
And say we were stupid, period. And hoping that next time we do a better job. But let's come to the problem William mentioned before. I can tell you that there was a meeting which was exceptionally reported in the press, which is the first time I know of. The head of Mossad, Yossi Cohen, went to Moscow. He sat down with Vladimir Putin and his security advisor, Nikolai Patrushev. The two discussed security issues related to the Middle East. According to a statement which was released then by Patrushev's office, Cohen also met with the head of the SVR, which is the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. A parenthesis there, that SVR has tripled in size in the last 10 years. There is a reason to that. If we can go and I try to explain what it is. The main reason that it tripled in size was the fact that when the communist regime, when the Soviet Union collapsed, they lost a lot of input which was provided by satellite countries like Hungary and so on and so forth. So they had to fill that hole and they had to triple the size. Now, coming back to the thing, it is considered unusual for there to have been an official announcement about the meeting because Cohen's trips, Cohen is the head of the Mossad abroad, are usually made in secrecy. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met 2 weeks ago with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow to mark the 25 years of Russia-Israel relations. Now, as a direct fallout from that meeting, there was a foreign minister, an Egyptian foreign minister, who came to Jerusalem. And he sat down with Bibi Netanyahu. The Saudi Arabia News Network reported Monday that Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu has expressed willingness to meet with Palestinian Authority head Mahmoud Abbas at a summit in Cairo. I just got yesterday news that Abbas refuses to come to Cairo and meet with Bibi Netanyahu unless Israel accepts all the preconditions, which is totally out of question. Now, Netanyahu reportedly agreed to such an event during his meeting on Sunday last week in Jerusalem with Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri. Abbas reportedly agreed to the summit prior to the meeting with Netanyahu. And now he recounted and he says he's absolutely not concerned. Now, whether this is being discussed or not, Israel has always said it is ready to direct negotiate bilaterally and without precondition. That's what Bibi Netanyahu's office stated in response to the report. Simultaneously, Israel media reported that there was and is an effort underway by Cairo and Jerusalem to set a meeting between Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Netanyahu in Egypt to coordinate a regional peace effort. So that means we don't come into play, they are playing on their own, and I suppose with the blessing of Saudi Arabia. That's what I have to say.
So, Wallace, do you see that as a real plus, a real positive, and if so, or negative? How do you view this?
Yeah, if you look at it from a Middle Eastern point of view, I see it as a very positive. From our point of view, it's a disgrace because we've been cut out.
Interesting.
The John Ketchup Kerry and all those, his gang from the State Department, they're clueless. They don't understand what's going on. And on top of everything, our agency, the CIA, does not provide the goods they are supposed to provide.
So you see a realignment, if you will, or a new alignment of a coalition in the Middle East that is going to strengthen Israel's position and security over there.
It will be. It's not only the security of Israel. It's going to be it will be a blessing for the entire Middle East because countries like Israel, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Dubai, all those countries, they understood that they cannot count on us. We failed them totally. So therefore they say, okay, we have to do it on our own. And the thing which is, nobody reported that. There was a meeting last week in Paris from it's an association which is...
He has no reason to. He has made it quite clear that his sympathies lie with the Muslim world, the Muslim community. And Donald Trump, in his announcement this week of Mike Pence as his vice president pick, has said, both of them have come out and said that we need to take the gloves off. And once they are elected, that is exactly what's going to happen. We are fighting a uniformless enemy, and it is an asymmetrical war, one that is going to take all of our resolve to go after them. And I think that as bad as things are right now, and as you described, the somewhat laissez-faire torpor that seems to be, some people seem to be adopting as it's business as usual, this is going to wake them up, because we are facing some very, very violent times. The Islamists among us are not going to go quietly. We're going to see our cities erupting in explosive violence once this new administration gets put in place and takes off the gloves. That's my view on it.
Wallace, in your opinion, do you think that the reaction of the French government, okay? I have here the French Prime Minister basically said to the French people that they must learn to live with terrorism, at least for the time being, just because the problem within their borders is so, it's so ingrained, and they have such a problem with these no-go zones. Do you think that what the French have been doing so far is going far enough, or do you think that perhaps, a new day in American leadership, who knows, will lead to a global strategy which will actually see some new tactics, new strategies to, actually cripple these networks and rout out the problem?
Okay, I'll give you the answer in two different sections. First, what is the reaction of the president of Hollande of France? The only thing worth noting, what he came out with, was that they're going to increase the military actions in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. That was his response, which was totally misunderstood and not understood at all by the public at large. That's closest the fact. France, like Germany and United States, have a huge problem in the intelligence community. They are completely compartmentalized, and they don't talk to each other. And therefore, information which is available in one section, in one agency, is not shared because of jealousies and things like that, which is a common trait in France, in Germany, in England, and especially in the United States. We see that immediately, for example, that the CIA didn't have any knowledge that a military coup was in a brewing in Turkey. It's not. I can't understand that. That's beyond my little mind. I don't play that game any longer. So that's one thing. France has already started, supposedly, to reorganize their intelligence community. Same applies also in Germany. They finally understood. But Germany has a dual problem. Germany has the problem of having Merkel at the helm of the government. In my opinion, today, in what I call the Western world, we are faced with three major countries having alliances which I do not understand. One was, unfortunately, Turkey.
Counterterrorism, investigative journalism, finance, the law, and enforcement. This program presents views and opinions which center around our American conservative ideals, the ideals of our founding, rooted in love of country and the protection of our Constitution and our future generations. Now, here's this week's moderator, William Palumbo.
Good morning, and welcome to the USA Transnational Report. I'm your host, William Palumbo. We're here with our panelists, Andrea Shea King. Good morning, Andrea.
Good morning, William.
And Wallace Brushweiler. Good morning, Wallace.
Morning, William.
Our number is 855-853-5227. Any questions, comments, please feel free to call in, join the conversation. Before we get started today, we'd like to thank our affiliate, AM 1410 KMYC in Marysville, California, and our producer, JJ McCartney, who you can find at jjmccartney.com. Well, each week, the panel here, we meet usually on a Wednesday or Thursday to discuss the topics that we'll be talking about on Saturday morning, and then on Friday evening, we sit down again and we kind of revise based on what's happened. Yesterday, which has been the case on so many other Fridays recently, we had to completely revise our topic list due to late-breaking events. In what has really become the new normal since Obama has taken office, this week we're faced with the horror of another terrorist attack, this time in Nice. Prior week surprises have included the slaughter of police officers in Dallas, the attack on the Bataclan, and anti-Trump riots. So we really are in for some, well, we've been living through some rough times for sure. Yesterday, of course, we got the additional surprise that a now unfortunately failed coup took place in Turkey. And we're going to talk about that a little later on in the show, give you the latest update. But now let's turn our focus to Nice. So there's been another horror in Europe, in France. The reality of jihad actually has become daily news. In conversations I've had with people, friends, both in the U.S. and in Europe, they almost view it as, unfortunately, business as usual, and I find this extremely alarming. To fight this torpor, I guess my question is very simple. Why don't we commit to doing whatever is necessary to reclaim our basic sense of security? And for that matter, why doesn't Europe and the countries in Europe do the same? And I don't understand why we don't end this suicidal, idiotic political correctness that has us fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. Mm-hmm. When do you think we'll take the gloves off? Based on the reactions this week, there were a number of people who said it couldn't be any clearer, we are at war, but what does that war really look like? And how do we actually come to a point where the situation is back in the bag and under control? So we're going to lead off with that and say a prayer for the 84 dead and 200 plus injured in Nice. But in the interest of preventing things like this in the future, what should our leaders, particularly our hopefully new administration in November, do to combat this on a worldwide scale? So with that, I'd like to open the conversation to our panelists.
If I can jump in, I would like to say that it's going to take new leadership in Washington. We cannot count on the Obama administration to do anything about this. If he hasn't done anything in 7.5 years, he's not going to begin doing it now.
Turkey is moving after the coup, the failed coup last night, moving directly into the steps of Iran. It's going to be a fight between, at the end of the day, will be a fight, if that goes on, between Tehran and Ankara. And then Merkel, who is a sympathizer of the Muslim faith. And eventually, here we will be able to reverse the course by November elections. But because otherwise there's nothing else. Let's assume for 1 second that sanity comes and prevails on November, that Trump gets into the seat in the White House. He will have an incredible problem. He will have to be surrounded by people who know what to do and how to do it, and especially how to handle foreign governments. And I'm talking here especially France and mainly Germany. Germany is a problem. Let's assume that for 1 second we want to form a global alliance and declare war. This is the only way that we can topple that problem. We will have a problem convincing people like Merkel. For Erdogan, you can count him out. That's absolutely not. He's a caliph. That's it. He showed his true colors. I can tell you at the end of this show, I will give you some incredible news which I got from the Germans. I just want to keep the suspense till the end. But Erdogan is a shabby character, and I don't understand, or I understand because if you remember, Obama declared that Erdogan is his best friend. So I mean, when you get this kind of alliance, it's very difficult to come to grips. Regarding the attack in Nice, there is very little that you can do, in my opinion, unless you have infiltrated those circles, and that is valid in France, in Germany, in England, and especially in the United States. There is no other way. To stop that politically correctness idiocy and allow scientific profiling, which has to be done. You can't get around that. And you have to infiltrate those groups. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think that the so-called civil libertarians, which have put up all these walls in this country, and I guess really the West in general, to say that, you know, privacy and the rights of individuals, which we all cherish, but you know, are we going to really be willing to sacrifice our own citizens, our own people, our own children, you know, at the altar of these rights every week? I mean, I think eventually people will have to start to recognize that perhaps they've gone a bit too far with their insistence that, you know, there should be no monitoring of electronic, you know, communication, eavesdropping, you know, monitoring of mosques, etc. But that really kind of brings us to the new world we're living in, right? Right. And what the next president, let's say, will face. And part of that is the complete realignment of the Middle East. We almost had an earthquake in the Middle East yesterday with that coup. But nonetheless, there were developments earlier in the week which still pointed to the fact that, you know, let's say in January, when we hope a President Trump comes